Teams mix up use cases and user stories all the time, and that confusion seems harmless until the roadmap gets crowded and nobody agrees on what problem they are solving. Picture a founder staring at a wall of sticky notes, each one sounding smart, while the team still cannot explain what the customer is actually trying to do. A user story is not a full system blueprint because its job is to capture value in one tight sentence from a real person's point of view. Think of someone on a freezing train platform trying to unlock a ticket app before the gate closes. Because that urgency is the energy a good user story should carry. A use case does a different job because it maps the flow around that need. Who starts the interaction? What steps happen, what choices appear, and what failure paths must be handled. Now zoom out to the whole journey: the tap, the loading state, the identity check, the timeout, the retry, and the relief when the app finally works. So the simplest shortcut is this. User stories are for choosing slices of value, while use cases are for understanding behavior across an experience. If the two get swapped, teams often build polished features that look complete in demos but collapse the moment real people do something slightly messy. Say your product owner writes, reset password with SMS and email fallback and fraud protection and account lock rules, and calls that a user story. On screen that sounds impressive, but in practice it bundles 3 decisions, 2 workflows, and a pile of edge cases into one sentence that nobody can estimate honestly. A cleaner user story would say, as a customer, I want to recover access to my account quickly so I can continue what I was doing. That version feels human, because you can immediately imagine the stressed person, the interrupted task, and the reason speed matters in the moment. Then the use case takes over and expands that story into the actual mechanics. Enter email, receive code, verify identity, reset password, confirm success, or handle failure. Suddenly you can see the screens, the branching rules, the security checks, and the places where the experience can either build trust or create rage. This is why user stories are powerful in planning sessions, because they help teams ask which outcome matters most and what is the smallest valuable thing we can ship first. Good planning feels like editing a film, cutting away the noise until only the scenes that move the story forward are left on the timeline. Use cases shine when complexity rises, especially when the workflow crosses systems, departments, permissions, devices, or moments where one bad handoff ruins the whole experience. Imagine a nurse updating a patient record, a pharmacy receiving the order, and a billing system checking insurance, all before the prescription can be released safely. In that kind of environment, a loose sentence is not enough, because the team needs to understand actors, preconditions, alternate flows, exceptions, and successful outcomes. When stakes are high, the boring details are not boring at all, because they are exactly where trust is either protected or broken. Another easy test is to listen for the question hiding underneath the work, because user stories usually answer why this matters, and use cases answer how this works. When a designer asks what the customer is trying to achieve, you are in user story territory. But when an engineer asks what happens next, you are entering use case territory. The best teams do not pick one and throw away the other because they treat them like a pair. The story gives direction, and the use case gives structure. It is like architecture and interior design working together, where one shapes the flow of the building and the other makes sure a real person can actually live in it. If you are deciding what to put in the next sprint, start with user stories, because they keep the conversation anchored in user value instead of internal feature jargon. If you are preparing for implementation, testing, service design, or anything with real branching logic, bring in the use case before assumptions start breeding in silence. A lot of product chaos comes from teams skipping this handoff, then wondering why everybody heard the same meeting and walked away with different mental movies. You can almost see it happen. One person imagines a simple button, another imagines a full workflow engine, and a third imagines a future support nightmare. So here is the practical rule you can steal today. Write the user story to define the value, then map the use case to define the journey. Follow that consistently and your backlog gets clearer, your design reviews get faster, and delivery starts feeling calmer and more deliberate. There is one more reason this matters. Clear user stories make prioritization easier because they expose which outcomes are urgent, repeated, emotional, or commercially important. And clear use cases make testing easier because QA can walk the happy path, the alternate path, and the failure path without guessing what the team meant. When both artifacts are working together, meetings shrink, rework drops, and people stop arguing about words because the intent and the flow are visible. So if you want one sentence to remember, keep this one. User stories frame the need and use cases choreograph the experience. That is how strong product teams stay user-centered without becoming vague and stay system-aware without becoming bureaucratic.